And for the second half in our 30 minutes, we have Barbara, AD, coming up to share with us. And as much as Ashley has shared about Adobe's journey as a company and individually as well, Barbara's going to help us and coach us through some specifics around what we can do within the politics of our own company. And Barbara's another transplant. Like I mentioned before, there's a lot of us here. She also comes to us from the East Coast, but from Montreal instead of Maryland, as Ashley did. So we're really excited to welcome Barbara to the stage. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So, navigating politics for impact. What this is about is getting your ideas out there. It's about creating that significant change that needs to happen within your company and getting those important decisions made. Most importantly, it's about getting the sponsorship that you need for yourself and for your career. So everyone in this room is an expert in one of the 3 key disciplines in corporate life, those being engineering and operations, sales and marketing, and finance. Some of you are already experts in at least 2 of those disciplines. And they say that to be a CEO, you have to be an expert in 2 out of 3 of engineering, sales and marketing, and finance. What I'm going to share with you today is a bunch of the unwritten rules, the stuff they don't teach you in MBA school, and the stuff that really I'm surprised to say I've never seen in a company training or even in mentoring content. So first, a story about what not to do. So earlier in my career, I was a director in product management. I was in the unfortunate situation that there had been a lot of change in my management team. So my senior vice president had left the company, my boss, and his boss, the executive vice president, had also left. So therefore, I had no air cover. I had no one to vouch for me, no one who really understood my value. I had recently moved from corporate strategy back into the engineering business unit, so I wasn't in the best spot, let's just put it that way. So I was about 3-4 months into the role, and we had a new senior vice president come in from outside the company. We were looking at our portfolio of development projects, and we realized we did not have the budget that we needed to execute on everything that we wanted to do. So I sat back and actually did a portfolio analysis. I looked at every program we had and where we were spending our money. And I discovered that there was one program we were spending $8 million a year in sustaining engineering for which we had no revenues. Okay, so just to put that in perspective, at the time, that was worth about 32 full-time, high-paid engineers. So we could do a lot of development for that kind of budget. And this program had been running for several years with no revenues, ever. So I put up my hand and said, hey, why don't we just stop doing this? Well, as it turned out, I had found a sacred cow. A program which was my own boss's sacred cow. Anyway, let's just say that some weeks and months later, he separated from the company, but not before the hearing to approve my promotion to vice president. Okay. So, of course, I wasn't in the room. I got the feedback later from HR that I didn't have the support of my management team. So my new senior VP, who of course was delighted with this found money of $8 million that he could spend on his new programs, said to me, you know, your boss really owes you an apology. But unfortunately, the damage was done. There were 3 layers of management who had heard about me from my boss, who was now no longer with the company. So that's my story of what not to do. But just to put it in some more perspective, I want to share the same story with this football diagram. So I'm the star product management director at the bottom there. And the next level up is my boss, the red X, and then the new big boss, the green O. So again, the new big boss is delighted. I am playing right into his needs, which are to get some more budget to execute on his mandate. But I made the cardinal mistake of going against my boss. Do not do this. Something else to watch out for is the dreaded peer that's working against you. So that red X to the left of me was one of my peers who probably could smell there was going to be an opportunity for promotion, and frankly went out of his way to make things difficult. So the net of it is, this was probably the worst episode of my career. And I share this with you because I want you to understand some of these unwritten rules of the corporate world. Anybody here play team sports in high school? Well, that's pretty good. Unfortunately, I was all like individual sports, gymnastics and springboard diving, so I missed this. Most important rule, follow the leader. I think I did the right thing. Probably would have waited 6 months until after my promotion hearing. All right, so moving to the what to do part of the story. Here are the best practices of navigating politics in an organization. And this applies to very large companies, but it applies equally well to entrepreneurial companies and nonprofits as well. If you want to create change, go for material impact. And what that means is do something that's going to really matter, that's going to really drive revenues, it's going to significantly drive profits, it's going to significantly drive your geographic scope, whatever that may be. If you're going to risk your personal political capital, it needs to be something that's really worth doing. As you're thinking about this change, don't ever skip the step of doing the analysis. There's no substitute for a data-driven approach. And so that goes without saying as part of this first rule of go for material impact. The second key rule is choose a teachable moment. And in your company, it's unique, but there are certain things that create a teachable moment. The first one is just your quarterly rhythm of analyst calls, earnings calls, right? There's always a requirement for something new to talk about with the street. So sometimes that creates an openness with the management team to hear about a new idea. One of the best times to look at influencing either creating a big change or precipitating a big decision is there's kind of a time when the strategy is formed before the annual budget, if you have that sort of luxury these days of an annual cycle. But there are simply moments where there's an openness to talk about strategy, to talk about what new things should we be doing and what can we stop doing in order to allow us to do that. So that's the second key point. Choose a teachable moment. The third key point is get buy-in from your peers and seniors. And this means not just getting them to understand your idea. This also means actually enlisting them, either to help you with the analytics, to support your idea in a meeting, to support your idea when they're advising their own boss. It's really important that you not go this alone. In fact, that you understand the politics, understand the psychology of your organization before you take this on. All right, so I'm going to shift now to another football diagram that looks a lot more like how this should work well. So once again, you are that green star at the bottom row. The two people to the right there are your peers. One of them is someone who can certainly help you and knows aspects of the execution of this idea, of the market, that you don't know. So partner with that person and make sure that you hear their ideas and that they feel heard. The other person on that row with you, one of your peers, is what I call the boss whisperer. The boss whisperer is the one that your boss will go to and say, hey, Barbara came up with this, like, what do you think, right? You have to know what that person thinks of your idea, and therefore, get to them ahead of time. Obviously, it's important to follow the leader. Remember chapter 1. Your boss has to be supportive, and that person, he or she, needs to completely understand why this is in their interest, because this is all about them being aligned with what you have in mind to do. Obviously, the idea has to be aligned with the big boss as well, whomever is going to make the final decision here. Whatever it is you're articulating, it has to play into the specific goals and objectives that that person has right now. And so that vertical alignment is critical. Now, here's the other interesting wrinkle, is what I call the uncles and aunts, okay? Not your boss, but his or her peers. In that group, there's probably going to be someone for whom this change is going to move their cheese, right? It's going to change the way they operate, maybe even change their profit picture, whatever that is. There's going to be someone who's a peer of your boss who is either negative to this idea or certainly significantly concerned. And so it's important to enlist the support of your boss in talking to this person. And this is a place where you really do need to think about how politically stable is my boss? How much risk are they willing to take? To what extent do I need to make sure that they know I'm talking to the boss's boss or I'm talking to one of their peers? And it really depends on your boss whether that's okay with them. But it's important to find a way to create these links to do this communication, which is going to keep them essentially with visibility to what's going on and keep them comfortable that, in fact, this is going in the right direction. It's likely that the change that you're proposing is going to be good for the other business units as well, the peers to your boss. And so, in some ways, it's easier to get them on board. What's really significant here is that your work is making you visible to those people. And when the time comes for your promotion in a room that you're not in, those people will remember, yeah, it was really interesting idea, the way that she went about presenting it, the way that she went about getting buy-in from the team. I think that Barbara's done a really good job here. So that next layer up, the uncles and aunts, a very important part of this process. So coming back then to your own world and thinking about this, what is it in your organization that really needs doing now? Is there a sacred cow that needs to be gored? Is there some movement, like the story that we heard from Ashley about Adobe moving to the cloud? Like, that's a huge idea. Is there something like that that needs to happen in your organization? That is the type of change, the type of decision that you want to champion. Don't be the girl like messing around with some corner case thing. No. You want to be known for these significant changes, because these will make your career. Secondly, choose a teachable moment. Always be mindful of the fact that there are times of the quarter, times of the year, when you just don't talk strategy. You just heads down, execute. But the flip side is there are times when the executive team is ready to hear these kinds of ideas, to get that inspiration from the team. And that's when it'll be your turn to step up. And don't feel like, oh, I'm so impatient, we absolutely have to do this now. Believe me, that 4 to 6 weeks that you wait, you can spend gathering your data, you can spend gathering your support in the team, and you'll be that much more effective when it's time to pitch the idea. And so last thing, and most important, always get buy-in from your peers and from your seniors. This is where the political skills that you've never heard about, that you were never taught in school, come to play. You're moving from a situation where your incredible functional capability and competence are table stakes. Now it's time to play on a much, much higher plane. And so I encourage you to be courageous, and also just pick your spots. Really be very deliberate where you're risking that kind of political capital for change. All right. So that's it for the formal presentation. Very happy to take your questions. And the first one I always get is, oh.
Hi, my name is Ro. I'm going to use somewhat of a personal situation, but I bet a lot of us can relate to it. When I've been asked, I'm in week 3, I've been at the company that I'm at for 18 years, but this is a new area that I've been asked to kind of take on. It is women in IT, women shaping technology, and there's a lot of really good programs across the company, so this isn't a new thing, but I have been asked to kind of take this on to build that connective tissue, if you will, between all of these disparate, while very good programs, and really put together that strategic point of view and start moving the boat forward. What I'm running into is some of the politics that you've talked about. Obviously, I have the executive faith and relationships that have asked me to take this on, but it's at that peer level of people feeling like, well, that's something I own, and that's sort of that somewhat competitive, somewhat territorial, and I'm not interested in making this all about me. I mean, it's going to take all of us, but I would love your thoughts on how to, is it just kind of that old school, you know, get everybody in the same boat and make sure everybody feels like they're heard and make sure that they know this isn't, you know, with my name on it versus, you know, it's a much bigger than any one person. And then I would also add something. I do have a couple people who have said some, you know, some things. They're detractors, right? So I kind of like, do I spend my time with my detractors or do I kind of, you know, it's basic like CE kind of stuff. Like, do you kind of just let your detractors be your detractors, but focus on those that are either neutral or positive to help you kind of move your mission forward? So I know it's long-winded, but I just would love your thoughts in the early points. I really feel like this is critical in how I start off on the right foot.
So tell me, are you an IT person or what's your background?
Sales and marketing, communications. I've been in IT for 20 plus years. Most of it's spent on the corporate communications side, most recently marketing innovation, and now I'm in our customer office. So it's actually the first time I've been outside of a marketing function, which is also kind of interesting. But it's very customer focused, but with a opportunity to influence a very large technology-based organization, or I should say IT organization.
All right, so let me try and take a crack at it. First of all, on detractors, you absolutely have to, I believe, talk to them one-on-one and hear them out. The worst thing you can have happen is have them like yapping to a larger group of people and sort of infecting that negative energy, right? So I would say acknowledge the detractors. But the other key population you've talked about here is the people who get their worth out of ownership. I'm owning this project. I'm owning this program, right? And that's actually almost as bad a disease as the negative people, because those are the people that either you can get them to enlist and be a part of a larger, higher impact team, or they really can be a challenge. So I feel your pain. I know some of those people. I think the approach I've always taken is success has many mothers and fathers. So if you can create a larger umbrella program that brings the best of those existing programs together, that acknowledges people for what they've done, and that quickly showcases results. Like, pick something where you can have an impact. Maybe it's having more women speak at your executive briefing center. I don't know what the smaller metrics are to get there, but if you can get that drumbeat of good news, I think that'll help.
Hi. So first of all, thanks for trying to put some, flesh and rigor around this very difficult topic to talk about. It's interesting. I have a comment first, and I'll ask my question. It's interesting to me that you didn't bring up the gender aspect in your talk.
Oh, I tried so hard not to say he, because of course those are all men, right? But.
So that's. I think a lot of us feel an overlying political thing there. But my question really is on your slides where you have red and green X's and O's. And the question I have is, how do you know whether they're red and green? And how do you know that they're not telling you one thing and actually thinking something else? How do you understand intent, right? Because intent and correctly ascribing intent is very important in those slides. What are your mechanisms, or what are your approaches to actually get to someone's real intent as opposed to just what they're saying to you?
So many years of observation and psychology, building upon my engineering training. But seriously, you can only learn this by observing, right? Well-developed BS filter. And again, that's, I think, something that's teachable. I don't think that's a skill that you're born with. I think you learn it. I think, one of the things I didn't talk about is, well, what do you do if somebody steals your idea, right? That's never happened to me. No, so the thing to do is, again, success has many mothers and fathers. So if you were the first person to tell your boss and your boss's boss your idea, and somebody else starts running around like it was their idea, fabulous, even better. If you get 2, 3, 4 of your peers talking about this like it's a good idea, you're on your way. So there's an element here of, you do have to be willing to share. And that's just the nature of the beast when you get to this level of management, that it can't be just your thing. But coming back to your original question, which is how can you tease out malice, bad intent? It's an observational skill. I can't offer any better advice than that. So one question that I've had is, would you? Oh, sorry, there was another question.
Good question.
Yep.
What do you do with these sacred cows that you have to get rid of? Is there a better time? You said wait 6 months, but still the sacred cow would have died.
Well, in this case, the cow was born 7 years earlier and had been, nurtured lovingly in the barn for that long. So, another 6 months is, I hate to say this, but, this has been going on for a very long time. I think that, this, at the time, this was an infrastructure company, a company where The shipping cycles were, just as Ashley said, it was 18-month cycle, right? So it was a slightly different timeline. Doesn't excuse a slow movement, but sometimes, again, if a program has some mystical power for some reason, you may not understand. You may not understand why the CEO chose to do this at the time. But now, here sitting 7 years later, it was time. It was time to shoot that, and to feed some different livestock. I'm going to get too far on the manure analogy, but anyway, I mean, there's just sometimes you have to wait, and there's sometimes you have to act. I hope I answered your question.
So my question was, what's the reward? So if you've been doing this a long time, so can you share a moment where you felt supreme victory?
So supreme victory came to me in the second example when I showed you the football chart with all the green circles on it. And the Uber boss actually made this massive shift from what was, in this case, it was a go-to-market decision, going from a direct go-to-market, shifting more towards a partner go-to-market. And the fact that that decision got made, I felt really good about it. So that's the personal reward. From a professional standpoint, I am known as someone who takes on enormous challenges and comes to a solution in a way where the team is happy. There's no crazy kill yourself motion here. We get 2x productivity out of the team by choosing to do the right things. And so that's what has given me the professional brand that I have. There's nothing in there about money. Anyway, thank you very much, and I guess we're on to the next thingy.